Welcome to the 17th podcast of Soulful Thoughts from Ireland, where I weave new soul stories, reflecting on the times we are currently living in and on this grand pilgrimage of life and death that we are all on. I have now completed my retreat time in Sligo and am on my way back to the Derry Peninsula in County Cork soon after I do this recording. Today in this podcast, I am attempting to tell you of the deepest, most emotional pilgrimage I have ever made. And I've made a few pilgrimages in my time, so it's really saying something. Visiting the birthplace of my great-great-grandmother. I say attempt because words seem tasteless in my mouth when it comes to describing this very real, visceral experience. But here we go, visiting my ancestral birthplace. First of all, it was with great surprise that I learned that I would actually be able to visit. All the rental car companies explicitly say you are not to drive in the UK or Northern Ireland due to insurance reasons. My great-great-grandmother was born in County Derry, which is now in what they call Northern Ireland. Looking on a map, I saw that I was only 2 3/4 hours away. It seemed such a shame that I was so close and yet not being able to go. On a whim, I rang the rental car company and they said, "Oh yes, we're the only company that allows you to go to Northern Ireland." He said, "Go, enjoy yourself. It's a beautiful place." I put the phone down and wept and wept. This weeping came from an even deeper place than my gut, if that is possible. Well, yes it is, because I felt it. It was coming from somewhere so deep within my uterus. A week later, I departed. Upon first driving into Moneymore, where she was born, I felt the trees. I felt their ancient presence and wisdom, their memory. I remembered in that moment of arrival that we had on our farm in New Zealand what we called the bush paddock. What it was, I now saw, was a sacred grove of trees. It is where I spent a lot of time while growing up. The trees and I knew one another, and I would sing for the spirit of the trees that had been cut down for the farming clearing. Here in Moneymore, these grand trees also knew me, and I them. Upon placing my feet upon the soil, I immediately felt and saw a large root system come through my feet and spread out and into the land, going deep and wide. I began to weep with recognition, with rooted spiritual connection, with ancestral knowing, and even more that words cannot form around. My consciousness was altered, and I began to walk, feeling such an honor of walking on the land that my ancestors had also walked on. and the magic of life was singing and alive all around me. Moneymore is an historical town. It was the last place to hold out against the invasion and colonization of the English. There is a heritage walk that one can do, and it was fascinating to read the plaques along the way, giving glimpses into the life of long ago. It was a plantation town. Yes, Ireland had plantations too. That is, the English stole the land by force, brought in English and Scottish farmers and workers, who then rented the land from them, and the Irish were forced to rent their own land if they wanted to stay. To say it was a travesty does not even begin to name the atrocity. However, looking at my granny's maiden name, it seems her family perhaps could have been one of the English families that came. In time, the Irish, Scottish, and English became so interwoven, particularly in this place, and ultimately became Irish in their ways. The people I stayed with in the B&B were Irish as can be, yet she had a slight Scottish accent. Her ancestors had come at the time of the plantation. But there was no local ill will. She was well loved in the community, and I can see why. Every morning she would walk around the property, saying the rosary for all those souls who had no one to pray for them. And she had helped many people in need. She also treated me like family. Every day breakfast was waiting. She put out all manner of things for me to take as a packed lunch, and she gave me dinner every night. And we had many wonderful conversations along the way. Making some inquiries as to any relatives that may still be in the town, I was directed to a woman that lived close by in another village. They gave me her address and said, "Go visit her." So I did. I knocked on her door, and when she answered, I told her my great-great-grandmother was a Charlton, which was her family name also. She opened the door wide and said, "Well, you better come on in now." And we talked and talked for hours. She rang her cousins and her sister, her brother-in-law, telling her I was there. We were unsure if there was a definite family tie, but the spelling of my granny's name and her first name were all in her ancestors' family. I felt so deeply welcomed, and we spent such a beautiful time together. From there, I visited the local stone circle, and I have never seen a circle like this. There were 7 circles altogether. They were paired together in 2s, and then one alone. The lone one was filled with stones in this strange pattern. It is thought this was a plotting of the comets and the stars of the sky. And it is indeed the darkest night sky in the whole of Northern Ireland, so definitely a stargazing place. It also had a deep ceremonial feel to it, with what appeared to be processional ways made with the stones, and other larger stones standing as guardians for each pair of circles. Leaning my back against one of these guardians, I heard and felt very clearly, "Your ancestors have your back." Wherever you go, whatever you do, Your ancestors have your back. The tears spilled over. I had never felt this before. My family had never investigated our heritage, and so I had never felt their support or their love. I was the first to return from our family. And here now, with this land, the trees, the people, the stones, I was surrounded by this loving support and care in such fullness, in such entirety, streaming through my whole body. Throughout the days I spent visiting, the trees revealed themselves to me as also being my ancestors, as is the earth herself, and the wind and the rain. I felt my grannies by my side, and everywhere I looked and felt, there were my ancestors. Heavenly ancestors, family ancestors, earthly ancestors. There is nowhere they are not. This is a big revelation when it moves from your mind into your body and becomes a living, felt presence. Every day I ventured out. There was a deepening, another avenue of love waiting to surprise me. And through it all, I felt the unraveling of the family and ancestral wounding. I saw how these wounds had moved from generation to generation, and how I had carried this and lived them out also. This especially came to light when I visited a nearby holy well. And a little bit of synchronicity here. An Irish woman who had journeyed with me on pilgrimages I led to Avila, Spain, and Assisi, Italy, many years ago, lived just 4 miles away. What are the chances of that? Clearly very good. We had a lovely evening together, and she came with me to the holy well. Immediately upon entering, I felt its power. It is still frequently visited, judging by the many rags tied on the surrounding trees. People would traditionally dip the rags in the well, hold them over the area of the body needing healing, and they would tie them on the tree, praying to leave the disease behind in the rag. And it is such a large well, they would also bathe in it. As my offering, I sang a chant to the mother. Anne, the woman with me, saw Kalak, the crone, weaving with her hands. I felt the aliveness of the waters and saw the fairy folk coming out to listen to the song. Within me, it was my family's generational healing that was being brought forth. Though I did not have a rag to tie, I let the wounding out through my breath in the song to the mother. And the healing continued. It continued as I swam and swam in Lochne, which is very close to Moneymore. It is the largest lake in the whole of Ireland and the UK, being 51 miles long and 9 miles wide. The name means the loch of the horse god, Ochu. He is the lord of the underworld, who exists beneath its waters. To this day, fishermen can hear booming noises called water guns, which are associated with whirlwinds on the surface of the water. But others say it is the horse god galloping to the underworld. On this day, all things of the underworld in my life were at peace. The day was gorgeously warm and sunny, and the lake was like blue glass. It caressed and soothed my body and soul alike as I absorbed all the kindness and blessings I had received. There were other days, however, when the loch was grey and choppy and windy, and I could well envision the god of the underworld churning the waters of your soul. There were so many sacred places to visit, but just being on this ancestral land was the most sacred of all. I did not want to leave, yet I knew I would be back. In fact, I can easily see myself visiting periodically and simply soaking in the ancestral energy. When it came time for me to leave my B&B, I asked to pay for all the extra meals that I had been given. My generous hostess refused any payment and said, "Please, please receive this from us. We don't need the money. It is more like a mission that I am undertaking here," she said. We both cried and hugged. There are just sometimes you have to circumvent the virus rules, and this was definitely one of them we both decided was most needed. And we hugged deep and long. I began my journey back to Sligo, integrating, renewing, rebirthing, deeply grateful. I pray for ancestral healing for all peoples on our planet, for your family and for your soul. May peace and life reign. Beginning in September, I will be offering special healing journeys as individual sessions for both ancestral and soul healing. Please see my website under mentoring for this. And in October, a group course on living into the mystic unknown. See events on the website, meghandon.life. May your ancestors have your back. Slán.